In today's video, we're diving into the fascinating world of King Henry VIII and Queen Anne Boleyn. Our topic is why Henry VIII married Anne Boleyn. Let's explore the highlights of this captivating story. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to help us grow our channel. A storm brewed within the soul of a king, a tempest not of the sea, but of desire, dynasty, and damnation. So, there was King Henry VIII the Tudor, the eighth one to be King of England, and he was totally stuck in this huge problem about who would take over after him. It was a mess that ended up changing everything about his country, and even how religion worked across a whole continent. His heart, once seemingly content, now yearned for something more, something profoundly absent from his life: a son, a robust heir to secure the Tudor line, a male child to quell the anxieties that Queen Catherine of Aragon, Ferdinand and Isabella's daughter, had been by his side, in his bed and on his throne, for what felt like an eternity, 20 long years. A queen of dignity, piety, and considerable intellect, she had borne him several children, yet only one had survived infancy, a daughter, the Princess Mary. In an age where a queen could not, by custom and expectation, ascend to the throne without precipitating civil strife, Mary's existence, while cherished, offered little solace to a king obsessed with the continuation of his dynasty. The Wars of the Roses, a brutal, bloody chapter in English history, were a recent memory, their scars still visible on the national psyche. King Henry VIII, a second-generation monarch of a relatively new dynasty, understood the fragility of his position, the precariousness of a crown that had been fought for, not simply inherited. King Henry VIII saw in Catherine's advancing years, and the lamentable string of stillbirths and miscarriages, not a personal tragedy, but a divine judgment, a cosmic sign that his marriage was cursed. The biblical passage from Leviticus 20:21 echoed in his mind, its words twisting into a potent, unsettling prophecy. If a man takes his brother's wife, it is an impurity. He has uncovered his brother's nakedness. They shall be childless. Catherine, having been briefly married to King Henry VIII's older brother Arthur before his untimely death, found herself condemned by Scripture in the king's increasingly tortured interpretation. Though a papal dispensation had been granted to allow their union, Henry's conscience, or perhaps more accurately, his fervent desire for a male heir, began to interpret this dispensation as a grave error, an affront to God himself. He became convinced that his lack of a son was God's punishment for an incestuous union. The theological argument, initially a whisper, grew into a roar, a fervent, self-serving conviction that justified the drastic steps he was soon to take. But intertwined with this existential dread for his kingdom's future was another, equally powerful, force: the burgeoning, consuming fire of passion. Anne Boleyn, a lady of the court, possessed a charm and wit that captivated the king. Anne Boleyn was not beautiful in the conventional sense, lacking the fair skin and ample curves often admired, but her dark, expressive eyes, her vivacious intelligence, and her refusal to become merely another royal mistress set her apart. Where others succumbed to his advances and held firm, her virtue a shield, her ambition a formidable weapon. But Anne, she wasn't playing that game. She wasn't about to be just another mistress for a king. It was queen or bust for her, absolutely. This defiance, far from deterring King Henry VIII, only inflamed his ardor. He was a king accustomed to obedience, to immediate gratification, and Anne's recalcitrance only made her more desirable, a challenge to his kingly will. His letters to her, ardent and overflowing with declarations of love, reveal a king utterly smitten, a man willing to defy the world for the woman who had captured his heart. He wrote of his undoubted love for her, of how he had been waiting so long for your good leisure, and your being my mistress. Don't forget to subscribe to help us grow our channel. King Henry VIII poured out his heart, confessing this overwhelming desire to finally possess her, to just hold her, not merely as a mistress, but as his actual wife, his queen. This was not a fleeting infatuation, but a profound, almost obsessive devotion that permeated his every thought and action. He saw in her not just a fertile womb, but a soulmate, a woman who understood him, who could challenge him, who could be his intellectual equal as well as his beloved. The desire for a son and the fervent love for Anne Boleyn converged, creating an unstoppable momentum. King Henry VIII's mind, once perhaps merely contemplating a legitimate annulment, now saw it as an absolute necessity, a divine imperative, and the pathway to personal happiness. He launched his great matter, a relentless campaign to have his marriage to Catherine declared null and void. He dispatched ambassadors to Rome, argued with his most trusted advisors, and pored over theological texts, seeking any justification, any loophole, to escape the bonds he now considered illicit. But Rome, under the sway of Emperor Charles V, Catherine's nephew, proved an unyielding adversary. The Pope, Clement VII, found himself in an impossible bind. To grant Henry's annulment would be to acknowledge a previous papal era, a dangerous precedent that would undermine the authority of the Church. It would also incur the wrath of the most powerful monarch in Europe, Charles V, whose armies had recently sacked Rome. Denying it, though, would mean completely turning away the King of England. And remember, this was the guy, a really staunch defender of the faith, who'd actually gotten the nickname Defender of the Faith for his big write-up against Martin Luther. King Henry VIII's frustration mounted. Years passed, consumed by legal wrangling, diplomatic machinations, and increasingly desperate pleas to the Pope. Don't forget to subscribe to help us grow our channel. The king saw the delays, the evasions, and the outright refusals as a direct affront to his authority, a challenge to his sovereignty within his own realm. It's wild how that annulment, which was initially just about theology and Henry's own feelings, completely shifted gears. It became this massive point of national honor, a bold statement that England was done with the Pope telling them what to do. It was during this period of mounting tension that Thomas Cranmer, a gifted theologian, suggested a radical solution. Why not consult the universities of Europe? Why not bypass the seemingly intractable Pope and seek the learned opinions of scholars who might interpret scripture in Henry's favor? Talk about bold. This was something nobody had ever even thought of doing before. A subtle thing, sure, but boy, did it ever shake up where the power lay. The opinions gathered were, predictably, divided, but enough supported Henry's position to provide a semblance of academic legitimacy to his cause. With the patience of a king worn thin, and his desire for and growing ever more urgent, Henry finally took the audacious step that would irrevocably alter the course of English history. In 1533, without papal approval, he secretly married Anne Boleyn. Their union, celebrated in haste and shrouded in secrecy, was a defiant act, a direct challenge to the authority of the Pope. Soon after, Thomas Cranmer, now Archbishop of Canterbury, presided over a specially convened court at Dunstable, where he formally declared King Henry VIII's marriage to Catherine null and void of initio, meaning it had never been valid in the first place. He then validated Henry's marriage to Anne. The ramifications were immediate and cataclysmic. The Pope excommunicated Henry, and England found itself in a state of schism with Rome. Parliament, in 1534, just went for it with the Act of Supremacy, and that meant, plain as day, that the king, not the Pope, was now in charge, the supreme head of the Church of England, no less. Don't forget to subscribe to help us grow our channel. Monasteries were dissolved, their wealth seized, and the religious landscape of the nation was irrevocably altered. The Reformation, already stirring on the continent, found fertile ground in England, fueled by a king's personal desires and his desperate need for a male heir. King Henry VIII married Anne Boleyn, for one singular reason, but for a complex tapestry of motivations, each thread interwoven with the others. His gnawing anxiety for a male heir, a deep-seated fear for the future of his dynasty, provided the initial impetus. His fervent, consuming love for Anne Boleyn, a woman who dared to defy him and ignited a passion he could not ignore, offered a powerful, immediate cause. But the huge problem, the one he just couldn't get past, was Catherine of Aragon. She was so incredibly firm in her convictions, and Rome wasn't budging either, which ultimately pushed him to actually question the very basis of papal power. In conclusion, the marriage of King Henry VIII and Queen Anne Boleyn was a pivotal moment in English history. It was a union of love, politics, and religion that shaped the course of England's future. Thank you for joining us on this historical journey. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to follow and subscribe for more fascinating history lessons. Until next time.